Here's the main vegetable garden, the place where the food-making magic begins. First, let's talk about composting, a very important element of gardening. The first important thing to consider when gardening is rich soil. Composting material added to the soil will help your plants grow. Composting is pretty easy to do. Save food scraps and yard waste, like you see here. Select a dry, shady area near a water source, or just make sure that you have some water available. Moisten dry materials as you add to the compost pile. Mix and turn the pile to help maintain it. Your soil will be enriched, and composting will also help suppress plant diseases and pests. An additional benefit reaches much further than your garden. This process also reduces methane emissions from landfills and lowers our carbon footprint. Note, if you have space for an outdoor compost pile, that's fine, but you can compost indoors using a special type of bin that you can buy at a local hardware or gardening supply store. Once you compost, once it's ready, there are various ways that you can use it in your garden. You can just sprinkle the results on top or mix it into the area and cover it with mulch. You need to do this, remember, before you plant. You were already introduced to the idea of growing seedlings in an egg carton, so this gives your plants a great head start. Once the weather's warm and you're ready to transplant them to your garden, although beans are generally planted directly in the garden, we planted pinto beans, remember, in an eggshell to see if we would have the same results. The eggshells will enrich the soil with calcium and nitrogen, which the plant's roots will absorb and put to use as it grows. When planting your pinto beans, you want to make sure that you have enough room between each plant. If you will be using flower pots, make sure that they are large enough to accommodate the growth spurt of whatever you're planting. It's time to plant the pinto beans, shell and all. Let's watch. Pole beans will need some type of support to grow on. Be sure you have a trellis, like the one here, or a fence or other support in place before you plant your seeds. Remember, it needs to be in place before you plant so the beans will have something to latch onto as they grow upward. Plant the seeds 1 to 2 inches deep, and be sure to water the soil immediately after planting, and then regularly until they sprout. You'll get the highest yield if you plant your beans in full sun. Beans tend to stop flowering in the extreme heat of summer, and partial shade might seem like a good idea, but keeping them watered should be enough relief for them. They will resume flowering soon. Full sun also helps the plants dry and less likely to be affected by a disease. Although beans can feed themselves, pole beans produce over such a long period that they will benefit from a feeding or a side dressing of compost about halfway through their growing season. Harvesting green beans is an ongoing task, and the more you pick, the more beans the plants will set. Let's take a closer look at some of the plants that are well on their way to bearing fruit and vegetable. Bell peppers. The different types we have are red. Let's get a closer look at the one that's really looking good. That's a little baby pepper there. If you can move the plant up a little bit, you can see. There you go. That's a little baby. And another. This is the jalapeno pepper, my favorite. And this is the, can you see it? Okay, this is hot pepper. A cute little bush that's flowering. And another type. Red peppers, that's going to be a red pepper. And really unique little pepper here that I had never heard of before. The candy cane pepper. You can see it's very unique design. Candy cane pepper. All right, then we have, moving on, And we have tomatoes. We can find the tomato plants. Okay, you notice that we have some yellow pepper here. And red is here. Oh, I'm sorry, we have tomatoes, sorry. This is tomato. If I paid attention to the identifier, that's why they're important. The tomatoes. And more tomatoes, little Sicily tomatoes. Growing, can't see it, growing nicely. Okay. So, it's great to use some type of identifier to keep your garden rows neat and organized. You'll notice them here. You notice how I had difficulty identifying? Remember I said sometimes they look just alike? Well, these little brightly colored identifiers, if they're put right in front of the fruit that they're growing there, then they make it that much easier. Now these are simply rocks that have been painted on and brightly colored with the same type of aerosol that I warned you about. And this is watermelon. And the only way I know that is because of the identifier, because right now, unfortunately, there's nothing sprouting just yet. I'm waiting anxiously for the watermelon to grow. All right, there we go. And pinto beans we just planted, they're right here, and now we know exactly where they are. Even for the most beautiful garden, and I think ours kind of is the most beautiful, there's a word of caution. As lovely as this looks, there's always danger lurking underneath. You won't be the only one looking at your prized garden adoringly. Your friendly neighborhood pest, rabbits, deer, insect, may be just waiting to trample and nibble on your hard-earned goodies. But do not despair, there's a solution to that also. These pretty little pinwheels seem whimsical and a great way to beautify, but that's not their only purpose. Most pests will be scared away by the bright reflecting lights and the movement of the petals when they get caught in the wind. The cute pinwheels are only $1 in the dollar store, but they're also handmade deterrents that will do the same thing. A simple plastic bag, for example, on a nearby tree or on a pole will make just enough crinkly noise to make pests think twice before coming near the garden. An old CD, I know you don't know what that is, but it's a tiny, tiny disc that used to play music. And let me get a good look at it. It's spinning around. Okay, they also reflect enough and shine enough to scare animals away as well. Let me get a good look at it. Turn it around. That's how they look. That's a CD, and see how it reflects. That's a good deterrent. You may not have one readily available of this, but human hair or preferably dog hair will cause them to flee for fear that you or your dastardly little fun-stealing pet is somewhere nearby. And that's an example of some dog hair that's just thrown there. And pests will pick up the smell and want to get away from here. Also, you can make designs. This is just aluminum foil, but it is reflective. It moves. It also makes a bit of noise. So if you take some type of aluminum foil, tie it to something where it can extend and blow around, you have another ready-made repellent. Also, there's some natural repellents like mint, lemongrass, basil, garlic. You could include these herbs in your garden to keep insects, deer, and slugs away. Just remember, There'll be lots of successes and challenges when growing your garden. Some things may flourish, some things may not. You might want to keep a plant diary with pictures and notes to track your progress, what did great, what not so great. The great thing about this also is that you can use this experience to extend time with your family. Tending the garden could become a family time. You could even visit a garden center and take pictures of what you'd like in your garden for the next season. Give gifts to family and friends. Appreciate the joy and satisfaction of just tilling the earth, and ultimately enjoy maybe a family dinner with your bounty. I hope you're now inspired to give some thought to just trying a garden. I think for most it would be something that's very rewarding. So, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? Next time you're asked that, you can answer with pinto beans. With pinto beans from my parents' pantry, tossed out seeds from bell peppers, tomato seeds from a slice of tomato, and the eyes from a sprouting plant, all lined up in a row. I hope you're inspired. I hope you'll be trying to plant a garden very soon.